Let us know we're in the first place. Okay, well, I'm going to talk to you about what makes a great development team, a little bit about the challenges development teams face, and how we meet those challenges, how we maybe solve the problems. But before we start, I just kind of wanted to get to know my audience a little bit and sort of get a gauge of how technical you guys are. So if you would classify yourself as a developer, an out-and-out coder, stick your hand up. Oh, look at that. It's like the nerdiest audience I've ever had. Okay. If you classify yourself as like a technical lead, even if that's like a team of 2 or 3, stick your hand up. Okay. And then a little bit like sort of functional and non-functional requirements. If you're anything else, stick your hand up. So we've got maybe some business people, some sort of marketing, documentation type people. Cool. Project management. Okay. Yeah, you'll get a good bit out of this. Okay. Cool. You should all get something out of this. I'm going to explain a little bit about who I am and why I sound so funny. So my name is Mike Robinson. I'm from Northern Ireland. I'm from Belfast, hence the accent. Big into cycling. My other big passion is mountain biking and road cycling. So if you're interested in a rear suspension of mountain bikes, I'm your man to speak to. 4-bar linkage, anything. I can explain the geometry of a bike like nobody else. In terms of where I sort of came from and how I got here, I went to Queen's University in Belfast, the only university in the UK to be printed on a banknote, which used to be a cooler thing than it is now. After that, I went to work for a company called Baltimore Technologies, which some people may have heard of .com fame. I actually joined them round about here. It's our share price, by the way. Joined them round about here, and I said I was leaving about here. A coincidence? I don't think so. They were an e-security company, very much doing crypto algorithms and things like that, Java-based. Don't hate me. And then went on to join a company called Consilium Technologies, which were an e-government solution, again, developer. And then I left those guys and I joined Deloitte, where I've been for the last 6 years, where I'm primarily doing technical project management and technical QA. So for the nerdy people in the room, I can code in a version of Control like nobody else. And for the project managers in the room, I can write an Excel spreadsheet like nobody else as well. So hopefully I should appeal to both of you. Okay, so what am I going to talk about? Well, my agenda is very simple. I'm going to talk about what's the problem or the challenges facing a software development team, and then a little bit how we sort of meet that challenge, or how do we solve those problems. So I've probably got more slides than I can get through, sort of in true sort of agile fashion, but I've prioritized them in order of what's most important, and that's going to come at the first. So the stuff that you run out at the end, if I don't get to it, it wasn't that interesting anyway. Okay? Could I ask like Martin or someone just to give me a wave when I've got like 10 minutes left, and I'll try and sort of jump to the end or conclusion. Okay, so first one then, what's the problem? So what's the challenges that development teams face? Well, from a customer's point of view, and when I say customer, I mean the customer of the development team, so that's the out-and-out customer of products, the marketing team, the business, as it's often referred to. So all those people, the people that the development team deliver to, what's the, from their point of view, what's the problem? Well, a little bit like David Beckham, software's pretty expensive for them. They think it's a little bit too expensive, actually. To get it in the first place costs a lot of money. And when they do get it, it's actually pretty expensive to run. When they get that and they stick it into operations, it costs them a fortune, and it keeps costing them a fortune, and the price keeps going up. It's not what they wanted. And it's not necessarily what they expected. Okay? So that doesn't necessarily mean that they knew exactly what they wanted in the first place, but when they got it, it wasn't what they wanted. And it's unpredictable and unreliable. So once they get it, it wasn't delivered on time. It wasn't delivered when they wanted it. When they told their customers they were going to be getting it, they didn't get it from the development team to hand it across. The test team didn't get it in time to get it to marketing to get it out. Or there's bugs in it, there's defects in it, there's problems with it, the quality's not there. Okay? So that's the customer's point of view, but let's be fair about this. What is it from the development team's point of view? What's their sort of spin in this? It's hard. Doing software development is really, really, really hard, and we don't get a lot of respect for doing it. So don't. And things say it's not as hard as rocket science. Software development is as hard as rocket science. In fact, it's probably software development that got most of that thing off the ground. Okay? It's really, really tough. And the business don't overly appreciate that, actually. Or at least the development team don't feel that it's appreciated. And they don't appreciate the development team's intelligence. That company, the second company along that I quit, Consilium Technologies, the reason I left that company, great team, great products, they were really going places, but they didn't respect the development team. So the business made all the business decisions, they made all the marketing decisions, they decided what to do, and nobody ever asked the development teams. When they had like 20 nerds out there who were very intelligent, knew a lot about the product, knew a lot about what they could do with it, and they weren't spoken to, and they weren't respected. It's hard work, yeah. It's long hours. It's long hours. The marketing team go out and they sell something. They go, okay, they promise the earth to their customers, and then they go to the development team and go, right, go deliver that in 2 weeks. And the development team have to work every hour that God send, every weekend, in order to deliver that product. So it's hard work, and it's inconsistently hard work, actually. It spikes, and then you get absolutely knackered, and then you burn out, and then you sort of 2 weeks off, and then 2 weeks later you do the whole thing all over again. So yeah, it's tough, and it's got long hours, and we have to drink a lot of Red Bull and get a lot of late night food. And the last one, and possibly the most important one, the biggest gripe of any developer, the business don't really know what they want. Right. And there's kind of generally sort of two camps this falls into. The first one is the business don't tell us enough about what they want. So they sort of say, I just want a square. You know, they just give this very sort of simple, low level, and there's not enough detail for us to go off and build something. Then we add the extra stuff to it, we build it, and we hand it back, and it wasn't what they wanted. The other side of it is then that they completely over-specify everything. They go into the absolute level of detail. They basically do the technical design as part of their requirements. And then that makes it very difficult for us to implement it. So there's probably a middle ground somewhere in the middle. So that's the problem. It's a problem from the customer's point of view and the development team's point of view. So how do we solve it? Well, the answer is process. And RUP in particular. I'm joking. It's not process. But actually, this was the general solution to it. This is how we came about it. We went right, let's get more process, more governance, more control, more documentation. Let's just throw as much process at this as we can. And that's why we came up with massively complicated processes like the Rational Unified process, which is actually quite a good process if you implement it properly, but most people don't. Or waterfall. We just thought more control. We've got to control these guys. These developers just keep going off and pulling everything together, and it wasn't what we wanted. Let's control them. You know. So we came up with process, but process isn't the out-and-out solution. The out-and-out solution is technology, yeah. So SOA and Web 2, they're going to solve everything. I'm joking again, actually. Nobody's getting this, right? So yeah, technology isn't a solution either. So like actually, just kind of you know sort of if you go and speak to the marketing guys at SOA products, they will tell you that they will solve all your technology problems. You just haven't been building this stuff right. Or Web 2.0. You can make it sound like any problem, to be honest. So actually, technology is not the out-and-out solution either, but it's just a little bit a part of the solution. Tools. I'm not even going to try and bluff this one. Great tools have never written software on their own. Like, haven't they needed something behind it? But again, tools, they are useful. They are kind of part of it. So the truth is, actually, no one of these things is going to give you a great development team or a great successful project. Now, not doing any one of these right or doing them completely wrong will help drive your project to failure, but no one of them is going to make you succeed. These are all actually held together by probably the biggest thing, and the one thing that will make your project succeed if you've got great people. Yeah. So great people actually will drive your project. But these other things help a lot. These things in the middle help a lot, and it's really that sort of sweet spot in the middle there. That's what you're aiming for. That's sort of perfect project. So it's process, tools, technology, but most importantly is people. So the rest of my talk then, actually, I'm going to speak particularly about the people side of things and the process side of things. I think there's no shortage of technology talks at this conference, so you go to those. And I believe someone's talking about agile tools or something later on or tomorrow or something. Yeah. Me? Right, okay. So yeah, find out about tools later on. I wasn't talking about me. Anyway, so I'm going to be talking about process and people. So just to start that off, people. Actually, there's loads and loads and loads of methods out there, and then if you sort of simplify the world and put it into sort of projects into three categories of light, small, very dynamic, 3-person teams, not overly business critical, medium, 10 people, 10 to 20, getting more business critical, heavy, we're building airplanes, there's 200 of us, life critical systems. If you sort of categorize the world of projects into those three things, there's a raft of methods that you can use, and it's generally perceived that those methods have various degrees of sort of being light or heavyweight. And truth be told, that they probably do have sort of sweet spots in those certain areas. So, I've got waterfall right on the outside, but I think waterfall doesn't work in any situation. But yeah, there's loads and loads and loads of methods out there. And actually, the method's not the thing it's going to deliver you. Taking the brand, taking Scrum or taking XP or taking RUP isn't going to make your project successful. unless you've got a set of sort of core values that sit in the middle. So actually the real thing that matters is the principles that sit at the back of your head. Yes, okay. If you get the principles right, the method will fall into place. Okay. Agile Manifesto is pretty good. This is a set of four principles. And if you have a presentation later, I'll talk about those. But what I'm actually going to talk about here is the principles that we use in the company I work for, in our development teams, and what we believe actually makes our developers brilliant, and why we think they're the best out there. There's 3 of them sitting over there. So those values, those principles for us. Then the first one is change. So we're not naive enough, or maybe we are in some cases. We're not naive enough to believe that the business solution that we've come up with at the start of a project is going to be the ultimate answer. We're going to change our minds. The business is going to change their minds. The environment in which we work is going to change. Things are going to change about the solution we're trying to build. The next thing is, as technical people, don't be naive enough to think that you know exactly what the technology solution is going to be. When you start, things are going to change. You're going to go, I'm going to build that portlet. You start building it and you go, bugger, I can't make it red. I need to change completely how I've worked to do this. So, refactoring is a common phrase used there. I don't know if it's appropriately, but I mean, from the business, they don't know what they want, and also the technology guys aren't too sure what they're going to build. They're going to change their mind. They're going to discover new things. They're going to hit defects that they need to completely work around. So things are going to change. So you need to embrace that. And in some ways, it's an opportunity. Agile Manifesto calls it an opportunity. If you can embrace that change and actually leverage it, particularly with business, or particularly whenever the market changes dramatically, if you can respond to that market change, you've got that business is at a competitive advantage because they can actually get to the market faster. So embrace change. It's actually an opportunity. Don't go, scope creep, we're not doing it. A really, really bad thing to do on a project. But actually what you want to do with change is the first thing you want to do is work in such a way that change doesn't have an impact on you. So things like that are, like, imagine if you write your functional specification and requirements document and design document for the whole system up front. Yeah, you do that all up front, and then 2 weeks into actually starting the implementation, you discover we need to do this completely differently. You have to go back and completely update all that documentation. So that was an example of a change having a much bigger impact than it should have if you just didn't write all that documentation in the first place. Okay? Or you wrote a lighter version of that. So sculptors do it very well, actually. They take a big lump of brick, and they sort of carve the shape of the head, the shape of the arms and the body, and then they start putting the detail onto it and refine and refine and refine. So they never have to like throw something away and start again. But that's an example of actually the first thing you want to do with change is minimize the impact it has on you. Okay. And the last thing, and the next thing you want to do then is handle it responsibly whenever it does happen. Next one then is simplicity. Okay, so don't use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Okay. Simplicity is, I mean, we're serving the market now where actually people want more, IT gets more and more and more expensive, and people have less and less and less money at the moment. So people want more and more and more, and they want to pay less and less and less for it. And it doesn't work, like something's fundamentally broken there. Actually, what the real key is about doing less for less. Okay, it's working out what's the minimum amount you can do to deliver the most business value. So they reckon that like 80% of business value comes from about 20% of what development teams deliver. And actually only about 60% of it's ever used. So find that 20% and deliver it first and get it out there into the market, and you get 80% of the value back, and it only costs you 20% of the cost. So simplicity, do the simplest job, use the simplest process, and have simple requirements that everybody can understand. So simplicity. Yeah. Quality. So I heard a great quote, and it sounds pretty cheesy, but quality isn't the tinsel on the Christmas tree, it's the seed from which the Christmas tree grows. You don't test quality into a solution. You test if quality is in a solution. But you need to build quality in while you're doing it. Okay? And there's 2 big types of quality. There's internal quality and external quality. Internal quality is, are we building this solution right? So are we doing it the right way? Have we got unit tests? Have we got acceptance tests? Have we done those sorts of things? And then there's external quality, which have we built the right solution? So are we actually building the right thing for the business? And you have to take 2 different approaches to dealing with those. Well, maybe you don't. Actually, it's about feedback. Like, it's about getting feedback. So if you want to, for internal quality, that's like unit tests, acceptance tests, fit tests, all those sorts of things. You want to do those earlier in your process. So I don't know if you know the V model of testing. You want to capture the type of testing that goes on later on, and you want to suck that down in the development phase. So I think a common phrase is test well, or test early and test often, which everyone can understand. So that's run loads of tests, and that's run them really, really often. The bit I would add to that is test early, test often, test well. So there's no point in running millions of unit tests every 2 seconds. Because actually that's only testing the internal bit. You maybe wanted to run integration tests every 20 minutes, and you want to run system tests every half an hour. So achieving that is the real sort of panacea. So quality, built in, not something you test in at the end. Commitment, yeah. So you want to put in place processes and practices and ways of working that are based on commitment. Everybody has to be committed, yeah. So you want to put something in place that makes your development team, and this kind of comes back a little bit to the respect side of things. The development team know they're committed to delivering that solution, and they have committed to the business to deliver that, and they feel responsible for it. And that gives them 2 things. First of all, it gives them a sense of responsibility, so they will work to get it done. It gives them a sense of ownership. But actually, it's just a much more enjoyable way to work. If you know as a developer that I'm developing a solution that means the business is going to actually make £1 million, I'm going to work a lot harder in doing it and feel a lot better about myself when I deliver it. So it's about putting in place the sort of the processes that actually allow people to commit to doing something and feel part of something. If you're going to do that commitment, then the other big thing you need to do is visibility. Okay, I think development teams have a big habit of taking their sort of problems and brushing them in onto the carpet until you get within sort of 1 week of go live, and they go, "Oh, we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. It's not going to happen. Wasn't our fault, but it's not going to happen." So you've got to give constant visibility of how you're progressing, and it's got to be accurate, and it's got to be true. Okay, so you need to use sort of proper metrics, and I think again the Agile Manifesto does it brilliantly. It's working software for a software development team should be the only really true metric, and things like stop saying things like we're 90% done. You know, you get about sort of 3 months into a 1-year project, and we're 90% done, and then spend the rest of your time getting the other 10%. It's just not right. You're either started, or you're not started, or you're done. And the thing is, you want to split your work up into ways that you can say that about those little snippets of work, and then measure how you're progressing against those snippets of work. So features. So put all your requirements in sort of features, and then you're either not started that feature, you're started, or you finished it. And by finished it means it truly is done and ready to be deployed. Okay, so it's designed, tested, documented, and coded. So visibility, collaboration. So work together. That's why I really don't like the phrase "the business." It implies the development team aren't part of the business. Yeah. So it's commitment. Work together. Get your business people in with the development team. Get the testing team in with the development team. Have a whole sort of central way of working. I think like face-to-face communication is the best medium for communicating ideas and ways of doing things. So get people face-to-face. If you can't get people face-to-face, go for the next best alternative. Video conferencing. Sending people over to get them face-to-face for like a week, if that's not as possible. Or I mean, the Plume guys must know this. You work in a very distributed team, but you get together when you can, so you know everybody. Yeah, so face-to-face is the way to do it. So collaboration, work together. Again, it's about that sense of we've all committed to this. We're all going to deliver this, and we'll solve that problem. Last one then, and possibly the most important one, is focus on value. So we're all part of a business or part of an organization, but in some ways that organization must have some sense of what is of value to them, and that might necessarily be money, particularly working in sort of the public sector. There's more their idea actually is public value, as we're with a corporation, it'd be shareholder value. But ultimately that business has some sense of value, and you've got to understand what that is, and developers should understand why the stuff they are doing is actually going to be of use to the business. And this gets a little bit overlaps a little bit with the commitment and collaboration. But you've got to know why you're doing what you're doing. And actually then allows you to do things like, sort of seeing outside of the box. See, I'm a consultant, I'm throwing phrases out already. About sort of saying, well, actually, could we do this slightly differently? I understand this is going into this solution over here, and could we do this slightly differently, which actually allows these guys to make their job easier, which allows you to deliver a better system. So you've got to see why you're doing it. You don't just take a functional specification and start typing it. You've got to understand why you're actually working on that, and you've got to focus on that. And then you've got to eliminate the waste around it. So if you're doing stuff that's not related to value, then why are you doing it? Yeah, get rid of it. If it's not any use, if it's not delivering value back to the business, then what's the point in doing it? Yeah. Okay, so that was the sort of people aspect. Next bit then I want to talk about was process. As I said, people aspect, most important, get that right, and your process will generally work out. So process then, I'm going to start with a quote. You improvise, you adapt, you overcome. Anyone know who said it? Anybody? That was Clint Eastwood in Heartbreak Ridge. Okay, so I mean, with process, like I said, how do you pick the right process for your team? So you've got the principles, and you're happy you've got those in. How do you actually pick the sort of right process? Well, the way it is, pay attention to those values you came up with, those key principles you came up with, and then work out what the metrics are for your particular organization or your particular project. So I mean, we did this exercise with a company, and that's where these metrics came from. But you know, size, the team's dispersity, the criticality of the system. So is it life critical, business critical, the aversion to risk of the organization. So there's a set of metrics which you can use to evaluate sort of how much you are towards this heavy project side of things, or how much are you in this sort of light project side of things. So work out what those metrics are, and then actually you can measure what what you believe your project is, and then pick the simplest, right? Simplicity, the simplest method possible. Like, method is, in some extent, a burden. Like controls and things is a bit of a burden. So pick the simplest one that will responsibly deliver your project. Okay. And then there's a couple areas where you've spiked out here in this case of value. So maybe it's a business critical system, or maybe there's a lot of people in the project. In those cases, have a look at those areas and think about what do we need to do in those areas to handle that sort of spike. This is a life critical system, so what controls do we need to put in place to handle that spike? And actually, there's 100 of us in the project here, so you know, just having one team meeting every morning mightn't work, yeah, because it'll take a lot more than 15 minutes. So what are you going to do to handle the fact that actually, you know, you've got more people, or you've got that life critical system, and then put the controls on top of that simple process you came up with. So I mean, here's an example around like personnel. Again, we had sort of these charts for most of those metrics. So if you're a small little team, you can do daily meetings, you can multi-skill teams, you can deliver small and fast. But when you get up here, you've got to start thinking about, well, how are we going to split this work up? You know, how are we going to get these people to work together? There's so many of them, actually, we can't just get them all to sort of sit together and talk constantly. We've got to maybe have some sort of supporting collaboration tools and things like that. So think about then what those additional controls are going to be, and what you're going to put in there. And then, and this is possibly the most important bit, review it and adapt it. So keeping those principles in the back of your head, then every sort of so often, the same way as you review your code as you go along, review your process. You know, have a look at it and say, actually, is that working? We put that control in to deal with, we put that amazing wiki in to allow us to collaborate, and nobody's actually used it. Do we need to keep doing it? You know, or we write that, you know, we're not writing any design documentation because we didn't think we needed it, and actually we're discovering we're getting burned pretty badly because people don't know what they're doing. So maybe we need to start writing documentation. So review and adapt and evolve your process in the same way as you would evolve your code.
Would you say, in other words, that agile development or the lightweight processes are not fit for larger projects?
No, I wouldn't. I'm not talking about agile in particular here or anything like that. I'm just talking about sort of processes. I mean, this afternoon I'll be presenting a sort of a way of implementing this, and there's agile practices out there, our way of implementing this, but agile's just, it's kind of just a brand name now, like a bit like SOA. So no, I wouldn't. But I would say these principles work no matter what size your organization is. If you're not thinking about simplicity, change, focusing on value, whether you're 2 people or 2 million people, they're still massively important. And I would say this works. So yeah, I wouldn't get too hung up on the fact that it's agile or waterfall. I think agile is a set of sort of values and principles, can be applied anywhere.
So but as I saw the light medium process, it has different elements. Like the ones in the light process are perfectly fit for agile, but on the next slide you had some.
You had a rough waterfall and heavy.
Oh yeah, no, okay. Probably don't get too on the fact I threw those methods out there. The point I was trying to say, there's a load of methods. They generally have some sweet spots. Yeah, the point I'm trying to get across here, and maybe I've just not succeeded at all, is that the method doesn't matter. Like, actually, the out and out what sort of brand name you use, whether it's RUP or whatever, doesn't really matter. Getting the core principles right, and then building the process on top of that is what matters. And actually, if you get your principles right, your method will fall in line. Like, You know, we're not silly. If we understand that we need to get feedback on how we're building something, then we need to put in a meeting whereby we get feedback from the customers, or we need to get the customers in sitting with us. So think about the principles and then solve them. Saying all that, when you review and adapt, the last thing I wanted to talk about was the sort of the lightest method possible, which is actually pretty much based on Scrum. So yeah. The sort of what's the in terms of this circle, what is the light area? What's the sort of minimum set or minimum thing you can do in terms of process? And actually, for us, it's this. And it's about what is the minimum thing we can do that implements those principles. Yeah. So not worrying about the additional controls. What's the minimum thing we can do that allows us to build quality in, that allows us to adapt and evolve our process, allows us to handle change. And for us, it's this actually. So you know, preparation is your business case, your vision. What are you sort of trying to deliver? That high level sort of idea of what you're trying to achieve. Requirements analysis then is about producing a backlog of requirements and writing those in a way that's simple and everybody understands, and prioritizing those in terms of business value. So understanding what are the most important things, what is the 20% that delivers 80% of the value back. So that's this exercise. Then we work in iterative cycles. So iterative is about sort of saying, incremental is probably a better word. Keep building and building and evolving. That notion of taking the block of rock and chipping into it, the head, the arms, the body, and then getting more and more and more detail and evolving your solution. So that's the idea of, and that allows you to respond to change and to grow as your knowledge and understanding grows as well. So in those sort of iterations, we have iteration planning. That's about getting the feedback from the business. What do you want us to build? What's the next place we should go? What's the next 20% we should go after? It's about getting commitment from the development team. So the development team are in that meeting as well, and they're saying, okay, we have X amount of hours of people's time to do. So let's pick the work that fills that X amount of hours and no more. You know, this is what we can actually achieve. And the development team then going, okay, we can achieve that. We will go off and we will deliver that for you. So you've got that sense of buy-in and commitment from the development team. And it's realistic as well. It's based on real metrics. So it's based on looking back and saying, well, how quickly did we finish stuff like this before? Yeah. So that's the planning meeting. Then we design, we build, we test, we deploy, and we do it all at the same time. And that's the slight difference between sort of agile or just a normal sort of iterative process. You actually try and do these things at the same time. And at the same time, it's a bit of a, you don't sort of sit there going, I'm designing, and I'm building, and deploy. It's about saying you've broken it up into those little packets of work, those user stories of works, those little sort of items, those features that you're going to deliver that actually deliver value to the business. So maybe for an ATM machine, it might be something like as a user, when I put my card in, it can validate my PIN. So right, that's a requirement. That means something to the business. They understand what the value behind doing that is. The development team have an idea about how to do it, so the development team go off and deliver it, and they design it, they build it, they test it, they deploy it. And then it's ready to go. What you don't do is you don't write requirements in a way that's like, right, well, we're going to build, as a system, I will have a database. As a system, I will have an integration layer. You know, because actually, that doesn't mean anything to the business. They're going, right, we've got the database, what are we going to do with it? What do we do with this database? If you actually switch the project off then and there, what have you got? Like nothing. And you haven't proved the architecture either. You haven't proved that actually you can deliver what the business wants. So you build the database, you build the integration layer, then you'll try and build the presentation layer on top and discover the whole thing didn't work. Yeah? So you build slices of functionality through a system and you deliver business value. You don't deliver the system shell requirements. And what you deliver at the end of that, what the developers deliver at the end of that works, it's done, it's finished, it's ready to be deployed. It's ready to go out there and actually start delivering benefit back to the business. So at the end of the 4 weeks then, you have two sort of further workshops or meetings. The first one is you review that software you've just built. And you do it with the business. They understand what it was, because you wrote something like, as a user, the system will validate my PIN when I put my card in. They understand that. When you show it to them, they'll know what it is. They'll go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That was what I wanted. And that's about getting the feedback from the business and making sure that you are building the right thing. So the bit in the middle, you would probably have more sort of an internal QA lead who would sit within your development team. They're there to make sure you're building the thing right. But at that meeting, in that sort of review process, you'll actually be, it's about building the right thing. So you actually demonstrate that working software, and the business goes, that's amazing. Or they don't, and you take that feedback and you go and fix it. The other big thing you do then is review the process. So you get together and actually, hug and go, how'd that work for you? What things in there went well? what things in there didn't go well, what should we do more of, what do we really like that we should do more of, and what do we not like that actually wasn't that useful that we should do less of. Yeah. So that's about reviewing the process. And you go drinking quite a bit. And then you go through those iterations. And the other thing you do during those iterations every day, you have your daily meetings where you actually sort of get together and you answer 3 questions, just a la Scrum. What did I do since the last meeting? What am I planning to do until the next meeting? Is there anything impeding me? And for the project managers out there, I'm going to give you the biggest piece of advice or the biggest lesson I sort of learned. At this point, when you're in this sort of a world here, you work for the development team, not the other way around. Okay? So when they go into that team meeting and they say things like, yeah, I did this yesterday, I'm doing that tomorrow, but I can't get this to work because my database box or my development machine is not powerful enough. Your job is to go and clear that impediment so they can get on with doing their job that they committed to doing. Yeah, so you're there to actually make sure they do that. And that goes down to really strange things. Like I've gone out to buy my team tins of Coke that were cold and iced lollies because the air conditioning wasn't working. You know, such is the technology of Martin's laughing. But yeah, you work for them at this point when you're in this middle segment. You work for them. When you're reviewing it, you're one of the people that are going back and saying, okay, well, actually, you're there with the business, challenging what the development team have built. So then when you've done all that and you've gone through all those iterations and you sort of make your final release, then you do the project wrap up, and that's where you sort of talk about how did that go. You get your lessons learned. You do any training support. It's that transition to operations at that point, which can be actually a massive thing, but it's not something I'm going to cover here. But yeah, that's the sort of simplest process you can come up with.
You've got about 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I've got probably less than that in slides, actually. So then there's a series of sort of rules and artifacts that go with that. I'm not going to go into those in detail here, but later on this evening I'm doing a presentation where I go into a lot more detail on this stuff. So, in conclusion, no one method fits all products all the time. So methods aren't actually the answer. Start with people. Yeah, get your principles right, and the method, the process, everything else will sort itself out. And selecting the right method isn't a science. I don't think you can go out there and evaluate all your methods, and when you fill in your sort of spreadsheet and it comes back and says, yeah, rup's your answer. It's not. It's more an art. It's actually something that comes a lot with experience. And then the biggest thing I would say is review and adapt and evolve. And I'll finish with another quote from Clint Eastwood. If you want a guarantee, buy a toaster. Okay. Questions? Anybody? Yeah. Shoot.
I've come at this. I've worked for multiple years as a consultant on the side of delivering large software projects. Worked as a technical project manager, technical architect, working with clients.
Yeah.
Currently on the other side of it, where I'm a client working with vendors. And what I've always found difficult from both sides is selling the iterative process to the business. I can see it in internal projects. It's not a problem for me to say, hey, these are the things we're doing, there's a certain control over the budget. My external clients always wanted the toaster with the guarantee, right? It's like, we're going to spend this much and we want to know.
Why can't you?
I just work for law firms, right?
Yeah.
They wanted a 500-page contract that specified everything we would deliver.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I work at it from the other side, entirely understand, well, I won't say entirely understanding, but understanding the iterative process,
Yeah.
having gone through it, I've still come to points where people said, well, we've reached the last iteration and we're done. And it's like, no, I had a budget for this much to create business deliverable stuff, and we've gone through and prioritized
Yeah.
and cut stuff out, and at the end of the day, I still had to say, I don't have something business deliverable, we have a problem here.
Okay.
And so that, I've always wondered, I keep asking people
Yeah.
that question, I've never seen a good answer in dealing with it from that side.
So there's 2 things I would say to that. First of all, if you got to the end of it and they didn't have something that was delivering business value, they certainly weren't working their process was broken. Yeah. So if they truly were working iteratively and they got to the end of something and there wasn't something there that you could deploy, their process was broken. If they got into the project by 2-3 months and they didn't have something they could deploy, your process was broken. So certainly if they got to the end and they didn't have something to deploy, they weren't working in a truly agile way, they would have had something that you can deliver. I mean, the past 3 projects I've all worked on, which were actually up earlier, have all been fixed price, public sector, very sort of contractually based, and that's just one of these sort of aversion to risk. Yeah. So that's just something you've got to deal with. Like, so the fact that you have to tie down every requirement and write it all up front then it's a penalty you've just got to accept, and you've got to deal with it. That doesn't mean you can't work iteratively inside of that. It doesn't mean you can't actually work and deliver the highest priority stuff first. So, to take example, the project I worked on for Oyster Card, which is the cards you use in London to get around, we had really ridiculously tight deadlines. It was fixed price, fixed scope, but there was a real worry that actually weren't going to deliver on time. So what we did was we took the most critical functionality for the Oyster Online site, and we delivered that. So we had 6 months to do the project, and we delivered the stuff that was most critical within 3 months. So actually, they had something they could turn on in 3 months. And if we didn't hit the 6-month deadline, the cost was about £1 million. But so they had something after 3 months that they could turn on, yeah, because we picked the critical stuff and we built it in a way that it could be deployed as we built it, and we made sure it was the right thing, and we made sure it was built right. And then we went on to deliver the other stuff. And yeah, we slipped by like a week, I think, in the end, but which isn't really much of a slip. But they had the confidence that they had something they could run with within it, and they could still hold us accountable for delivering the scope. And if it meant we had to work an extra week to do it, we didn't charge them for it, so we just did it. So yeah, it's just something you've got to live with, but you can still get all the other benefits that come with working iteratively within that. So you can still take all those requirements, prioritize them, split them up in your sections, and go off and deliver them. So it's just something.
If I might add something to that, in my experience, managers make decisions on a certain amount of money to reach certain goals. To reach those goals, you have a scope, but it's far more easy during a project to have trade-offs in the scope to meet your budget than fulfilling all the entire scope during the project and run late at the end of your project.
Yeah. The other one is that you don't have to tell them. Don't tell them it's agile. Don't tell them it's iterative. just do it. And then the thing is, whenever it comes to getting a change request in, and you go, actually, that's not going to cost you anything, they'll see the benefit of it then.
We actually do phased releases at NASA. It's the way we build. We don't call it agile. We call it phased release.
Yeah.
We say we'll give you this set of requirements in 6 weeks. We'll give you this
Yeah.
in 12. And I would say 9 projects out of 10 that I've seen them do this, they'll just say at the first one, like, oh, we're good with this.
Yeah, they don't.
You never get to the next 2 phases, and you can go on to do something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, I've been approached with if they've just canned it early, and that doesn't mean canned it hasn't been it. They've gone, yeah, that's what we want. That'll do. Put that out. We don't need to spend the rest of the money on it. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, later on, I think it was sort of 5:30 in the big room down there. Polaris, is it? Yeah. I'm going to run a bit of a session on getting into more of the detail on that process and how it works, and some other practices like how to prioritize stuff, how to write requirements, how to actually go about doing those reviews and those planning sessions. And we'll do like a little couple of little mini iterations as well. And actually, it'd be good, if you've got ideas and actually you've things that you've done, if you want to come along to that and actually then share them with the rest of the group as well, because I think project management is probably very much a thing that is from experience.
Just want to say that Mike is here because some people in the community have sponsored his attendance, and that's the workshop this evening is definitely part of that. So I just wanted to sort of very quickly say thank you to Florian Schulze, Tom Lazar, Andy Zeidler, John A.S., 6 Feet Up, Stefan Ehrlitzhofer, Ross Patterson, Valentine Web Systems, and Abstract Edge, who all chipped in to pay for Mike's flight. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed this, and you'll enjoy the session in the Polaris room at 5:30 this evening, where we kind of get to do some hands-on stuff.
I'll be around today and possibly a little bit tomorrow morning as well, so if you've got any questions or you want to grab my email address, just give me a shout.